Yo, how we doing?
Ain't too bad yourself.
Yeah, really good. Really good. Been a pretty full on weekend. Done a bit of training. Pretty tender, but took some time off for the kids on Sunday, so it was all right. Yeah.
Nice. Bad yourself?
How's things going your end?
Yeah, things are going well. Like quite a full-on weekend. So like there was so much interaction with so many people. Like on Sunday it was just in the afternoon it was nice to just stop and hide away, if you like, and just have some peace and quiet.
Yeah, I think this is good for today's topic because I want to really dive into training, but a big part of training is actually taking the time off and resting. So I think that's where I want to take the conversation. Any points from your side?
No, I think it's definitely a topic to cover. And I think people need to understand a lot more on taking that time off, but like the difference between having that time off and being lazy as well.
Yeah, for sure. And I think touching on like overtraining as well as making sure that you're balancing enough rest in there as well will be really crucial. So I just want to make sure everyone's got visibility on this. So where do you want to kickstart in regards to this?
Let's let's go with having a balance. So like balancing the training throughout the week. Because it's definitely I recognize that it's a huge fad. That you've just got to be constantly smashing yourself every day. Like you've got to be in the gym 8 days a week for 60 hours. That's that's the general fad from a lot of people. You've got to every session you've got to destroy yourself and take minimal rest, which isn't the case at all. You need to have balance so you're allowing your body time to recover.
Yeah, agreed. I think from my experience on this, over the past 10 years, looking at like the military approach to training, which we're very like familiar with. And at that time, for that precise job role, that served a purpose for that precise role, and you certainly fit. But this is kind of what we touched on in other calls. But like the health, the body, the mind, not all being in like alignment with that as well. And I remember a time, I think towards the back end of my career, I still very much had the approach of more is better, and the more that I can fit in, the more effective I would be. But in reflection of that, it will come to like a Friday after maybe one training session a day, two training sessions a day, and I'd wake up like really sore, like to the point where I'd wake up on that Friday morning and have to like peel myself out of bed, and I'd be sore from head to toe, and I'd feel like my body was like actually like inflamed, like I had like inflammation in my body, and then it would be like, right, well, let's push through it. This is the done thing. You're meant to feel this way, no pain, no gain. But the reality of the situation is actually I wasn't in very good shape. Yeah, I might have been fit and could certainly like take on a hell of a lot of training load and a lot of intensity, but my body didn't represent that. Like I was carrying excess body fat, didn't have the muscle mass that I wanted at the time. So I think that speaks volumes. And maybe I wouldn't even take a day or two off a week, and then that would just repeat week in, week out. And then the crazy thing is like you're baffled, or I'm not actually making the fitness gains. Like my body doesn't represent all the effort that I'm putting in, and that can be really frustrating too.
One thing I want to pick up from what you've just said there is the no pain, no gain. Like it's the norm that you're supposed to be sore after every session. You're supposed to have DOMs after every session. And I think what people don't realize is the more you break down those muscle fibers and the more sore your body is, the more recovery time your body is going to need. To put it into perspective, I did a 17K long easy run on Friday, and I did some VO2 max work the day before, and it said, like I'm not saying go off what the apps say. So, but Garmin like had mentioned that I needed 3 days recovery. Now, Saturday was a recovery day. Like I was feeling sore Saturday, and then Sunday, I was still feeling a little bit sore. And all I had done was 2 training sessions. So imagine if I had done more training within that time, my body wouldn't have been recovered. So it's just because your body is feeling sore, if you are feeling absolutely sore and inflamed, have some extra time off, because we're not supposed to be constantly feeling battered and bruised all the time. The body's not made for that. Like the body can sustain a huge amount of intensity, but the more strain and pressure that the body goes through, the longer recovery periods that are going to be needed. And then look at race weekends as well. Like we take a week off racing, even if we've done 10K, a 10K race, we'll have anywhere from up to a week off, because your body's just putting your body through the works.
Yeah, I think this is really important. I see a lot of people just trying to get back out there as quick as possible, but here's the thing: like the fitness gains are actually made when you're rested, and when you're rested, you're recovered, and then you're primed to take on more. The way we explain it to our guys is like this stress rest balance. So you can imagine like there's a seesaw, and on one side is stress, yeah, and when we increase stress, then that tips the balance in this direction, yeah, and vice versa if there's rest. So we're trying to balance that seesaw out as much as possible. But if there's too much stress, then there's not enough rest, and if there's too much rest, there's not enough stress to create change. And I think going into what Mitch was saying about like soreness is not always a marker for like an effective training session or progress. And I see a lot of people trying to like change their body composition and really chasing soreness as an effective workout. And something I frequently hear is like, yeah, that was like a really effective workout, kind of like that soreness and pain. But let's look at it from the other point of view as well, as like if you're sore, and I'll tell you a little bit about my soreness at the moment, then actually that can affect other training sessions that day, that week, etc. And also that will affect how much you get out of that training block. So if we optimize the intensities, then actually we can achieve more. And it isn't a case of doing less, it's about being more appropriate with the dosage of training that we're actually applying. Because if you try and cram too much in a training session, or you do too much that week, it's going to have a knock-on effect, and that affects the consistency of actually training. So you want to optimize all of these. And there's two things to look at. Like, although your muscles might not be sore, your central nervous system might be overstimulated. And a great tool we've used over the past few years for ourselves, and definitely recommend it for people that want to gain a deeper level insight to not just their health, but how the body reacts to training, is Whoop. And Whoop is like really, really good for telling you actually how recovered your nervous system is based on your heart rate variability, or HRV. So just because you think you're recovered, you may not necessarily be recovered and primed to take on the strain or stress of a training session that you have scheduled in. And equally at the far end, you could be really, really sore, but actually you could be primed to go out there and do a cardiovascular workout versus a strength workout. And that's kind of where I'm sat today. So basically, doing like a fitness charity event in a few weeks. So I went down and done a run through of that with 3 other guys that were on the team. I'm just getting back into training after pretty much taking 6 to 8 weeks of no real structured training. And I'm building my volume, my intensity back up. So last week for me was like more of like a deload taper week, so that I can ease back into it, rather than going from 0 kilometers back up to like 60 kilometers of running a week and varying intensities and strength work. Is too much. So although I'm fit and my body could handle that, is that going to be optimal? No. And I'd be too sore, basically. And that would affect this week's training, and it would have a knock-on effect. But this is really where the mindset piece comes in. And if you haven't listened to the past 2 calls, go back and like watch the past 2 calls, because we speak about like the mindset and having really the confidence to like trust yourself and trust your process. But anyway, I went and done this workout on Saturday after doing a park run that morning and then doing a skill session, and my body was like not like feeling that. Like I didn't feel motivated to do the second or third session, because 1, it was too much for the physical body, and 2, for the mindset, and 3, knowing the knock-on effect it would have. And my hamstrings are so sore today. So going back into the point of, could I train today? Yes. Will I train today? Yes. Will I look at what I actually train today? Yes. So instead of going for a run on the hills at an easy pace, I'm going to jump on the elliptical. So it's going to be lower impact, lower stress, but still achieving the majority of the benefit of that cardiovascular session. So my central nervous system and cardiovascular system are primed to perform today, because I took an active recovery day yesterday, and it's now midway through the day today. So I've pretty much got 36 hours worth of like recovery, if not 2 days since that last training session. But my legs aren't feeling it. So I could go out and run the hills, but actually that could elongate the recovery, the muscle recovery. So it's really just being smart with what you're doing, and not doing more than is necessary in the first place. Yeah, I should never have done like 2 intense training sessions, but that's the way it landed. But you feel the brunt of it in some way, shape, or form. So just some food for thought. Anything to add on that, Mitch?
No, I think you've hit the nail on the head there. Yeah, like nothing to add on.
Cool. I think I want to like go into the training a little bit more, but really talk about the importance of what we're saying here for like sustainability and consistency, but also injury prevention. I hear of a lot of people that are injured, and really thinking about it now, I think I wrote it down. There's kind of 3 reasons for injury, and I know we spoke about 2 of them previously, but not for some time. But one is going to be due to like traumatic injury. And I know Mitch has had his fair share of traumatic injuries. So what we're talking about is sprains, strains, like impact, falls, collisions, anything really that is going to contribute to some form of trauma to the body. Another one is going to be like spontaneous, but these spontaneous injuries, you could really say, are they really spontaneous? Do they just like come out the blue? So say, for instance, in like high impact sports, or for instance, very like dynamic sports, racket sports, or even like OCR, where you pivot and change in direction quite quickly. Maybe an ankle might go, or maybe the knee might go, or the hip, or you put a shoulder out or something like that. So it kind of feels like it can come out of the blue. And then the third one for this would be like the lack of conditioning in this area. There's a guy we coached for some time, and he rolled his ankle like really, really badly in a race. And it did swell up, but he went to the physiotherapist and he was like, holy crap, if you weren't doing all of the ankle work that you were doing with the primal guys, if you weren't working on your knees and your hip stability, you would have broken this. So we can put preventative measures in place to mitigate this. And I wrote a short statement on my social media about like injury and strength work really mitigates, or really, yeah, it does mitigate it as much as possible, apart from like the odd occasion, your ability to prevent injury. So if you haven't got strength or accessory work in your training program, and you're just running a lot, or you're just focusing on strength a lot and neglecting all these smaller movements, that's fine for a short amount of time, but that may create imbalances in the body. And that's always going to be the case, because you do one thing and it pulls you in one direction, you do something else that pulls you in a different direction. So it's quite a hard one to manage. But that's why it's important to have the foundations in place and work through that. Because talking about how other injuries are accrued or happen is through overtraining, like doing too much, too soon, too frequently at completely the wrong intensity. And I just mentioned a minute ago about my training. Yeah, I could have gone straight back up to the previous mileage that I was on, could have gone straight back into all the training sessions that I was doing at the intensity, because 8 weeks ago I was there. So 8 weeks later, my body must be there. No, my mindset is there because it's reinvigorated and refreshed to take that on. But the physical body will regress in some way, or not regress, but it won't have the level of conditioning it had before. So it can be counterproductive to do that. So we need to ease back into it. So we're kind of testing the water, seeing how the body responds, and then we adjust from there. And now, because I had that Saturday where I done like 2 main sessions in the day, both were relatively intense. I felt the brunt of it, but for the rest of the week, absolutely everything was fine. So I know going into my next week to make sure that I balance that stress and rest in a more of an appropriate way and not be so hard hitting. But then my body's going to be more conditioned going into this week, providing I take that recovery time that's needed. Anything to add, Mitch?
Yeah, recovery is a huge part. And I think like I've definitely realized this over the past few weeks, like having that accessory work in there. But I think like let's talk a little bit more about accessory work. So accessory work can be something that's very light, that's going to hit a specific training stimulus, but not put too much strain on the body. But it can also help rehab any ongoing or existing injuries. So like mobility training, rope flow, wood drums, like all of this accessory work can play a huge role in prevention, but also strengthening as well. Because when we talk strength work, everyone thinks I've just got to strengthen my muscles, like it's just muscle, muscle, muscle. But what about your joints, your tendons, your ligaments? Because they're all attached to your muscle. They all play a crucial role in your body moving. So if they're not strengthened or mobilized, and something goes wrong, like you can cause more damage because you haven't prevented it from happening. And I found hitting just like anywhere from 5 to 10 minutes of mobility and getting the body moving, like with consistent repetition day in, day out, like 2 to 5 minutes can play a huge role later on down the line. Like, for example, last year when I torn my ATFL in my foot, like it took fucking months to get it back to where it is. And it's still not fully there now. Like you can feel it. But what we've incorporated is accessory work of ankle rotations, moving the ankles up and down, just putting pressure on it, holding it in a certain position to just help strengthen the tendons, the ligaments, and the tissues around it. Because like if anything does happen in a race, like it's primed, so it's going to prevent less damage if anything happens.
Yeah, Mitch is speaking from a lot of experience here. He's like the injury king from races. We spoke about his recent injuries, flesh wounds from last races, and I think looking back on the past like 3 years of your racing, there's always been like an ankle or a knee or a foot or something like that, and that's come from trauma. Like it's happened in the race, like whether it's a break or a strain through the terrain and how hard you really push yourself, and not from overtraining. Like I don't think you've sustained any injuries in training, and that is because of all the preventative measures that we've put in place with like the prehab work. So these accessory movements that are put into the training program to prevent the body from breaking. And like I mentioned with that other guy, like the injury would have been significantly worse. So this is something we always want to be actively working on to improve. And a lot of people might think, well, I'm already training an hour for my run-in, I'm already doing like some strength work in the day or whatever else. It's not about adding more, it's about doing things better, more effectively. And we don't need more hours in the day. Like on this call now, I'm standing up. Yeah, so I could be doing anything here. I can stand on one leg, so I'm getting some balance in. Yeah, I could even stand on a board. Yeah, I can do ankle rotations. I can even do calf raises. Like I can incorporate stuff into my working day. So if you are somebody that works in an office or is quite sedentary, look at how you can optimize your environment so you can incorporate these things into your day rather than going, okay, when I get to the gym, I need to do an hour's worth of strength, which you don't need to do an hour for the most part. It's more about like the effectiveness, or like incorporate that into a warm up or a cool down or anything like that. Although that could be something of benefit, it's going to be very specific to the individual. But like Mitch said as well, like it takes time to do this. It's conditioning, so you're not just conditioning the muscles, you're conditioning all of the connective tissue, the bone, and that does take time, but it's not as hard as we think, and it makes the body more durable and less likely to break, which is really, really important for OCR because we are throwing ourselves over things, we're going under things, we're running really like rocky, like hard terrain that can be quite technical at parts. And if the body isn't conditioned, we can roll ankles and stuff like that. So it is just like preparation, like prior preparation, rather than like, oh, it isn't broken, so I don't need to fix it. Actually look at it from the other perspective and go, okay, these are typical areas that can get injured. Like we're looking at the feet, we're looking at the ankles, we're looking at the knees, we're looking at the hips, we're looking at the back, we're looking at the shoulders, we're looking at the wrists. Okay, so really common areas that you can really just work to strengthen. And if there is an area of your body that isn't like conditioned or there's a weakness there, you can train that pretty quick. And there's a method that we use that really like accelerates this, like within days, not only like weeks, but that comes with consistency. And yet again, it's not about doing it with a very, very intense approach. Actually, that's counterproductive. The way we look at it is like with rope flow, and Mitch just mentioned this, like rope flow is a big thing that I do. Mitch does, have done for years, and a lot of our guys do it. And really the great thing about the rope is you can pick the rope up and you don't need to be warm to go and perform with that. And the reason for that is it's light. Yeah, so you're not shifting heavy weight around. And because of that, it's like very dynamic. So you can kind of warm your body up with that. But because it's not heavy, it's not going to come up a cost and impact. And because it is low impact, you can get high repetitions in. And it's like formulating a habit or doing anything in life. It's about the amount of reps that we get in. And if we're constantly going hard, we can get less reps in. But if we're going easy, we can get more repetitions in. And we can do that day in, day out for many weeks, for many months, if necessary, to really create more fitness gains. So that's the way that you can look at it. But also, this can be overlooked because we think, well, that's insignificant. Well, imagine now just doing 10 calf raises whilst you're brushing your teeth, or doing a squat hold whilst you're brushing your teeth for 30 seconds, 60 seconds, or standing on one leg with your eyes closed 30 seconds each side while you brush your teeth, or while you're on a call, or when you're driving or something like that, doing an ankle rotation or something like that. So you're incorporating it into your day. And if you're doing it in small doses, it doesn't really make an impact if you're going to do that once, twice for a few days or a week. But if you do that day in, day out, week in, week out, those 10 repetitions adds to 60 repetitions a week, then to 120, then 180. You get the gist, or whatever. If you're doing them like 6 days a week, which is pretty optimal. Okay, so just some more like food for thought on this, because this is coming from a place of, I was in the military, Mitch was in the military. And if you want to know a hard approach to training, like we can tell you all about that, but you're not in the military. Yeah. And we live in this day and age where actually we can be a lot smarter, and we do have science and also common sense as well, and being intuitive based on the way that we feel, rather than relying on all this science and technology and gadgets and things like that. If we really tune into ourselves, often we we know the answers of what we should be doing. And going back to when I used to wake up on those Friday mornings and I was sore from head to toe and just felt really inflamed, Matt now would not go out and train. Matt now wouldn't even get himself in that position in the first place. So if you're somebody that is feeling sore all the time, or you've hit a little bit of a training plateau, then I know like what I'm talking about here, what Mitch is talking about here might seem very unconventional and against the grain. And you might be thinking, how can that be beneficial? Well, we've done this with tons of people now, and we're both performing at a high level. So there's definitely something to it versus like absolutely hammering yourself. And there's a lot of training programs out there that will offer like phenomenal training for 6 to 8 weeks, but it's like, well, what's beyond that? You might make some hard fitness gains in that short amount of time, but is that sustainable? Is a big one. A training program out there that's been around for a while now is 75 hard. And I know a lot of people that have like repeated 75 hard and they're like, yeah, I'm going to go again. And my thought is like, okay, so you've been through this once, you intend to go through this twice. Where does it end? Do you just keep doing 75 hard for the rest of your life and just living miserably, eating like minimal food and like living this really Spartan disciplined life? Because at the same time of that, you're not really formulating any habits that are sustainable beyond that period of time. And that's what we want to be looking at. If it's not sustainable now, it's probably not going to be sustainable next week, next month, 2 years from now. And we'll just keep repeating these cycles. So often it takes a different approach, a more sustainable approach, that really sets us up for success.
Yeah, I tend to see it a lot, like during these 8-week programs. And whenever I see them, I'm like, okay, so you achieve your results in 8 weeks, and then that's it. You're just going to go back to your old ways, and then from 8 weeks from there, you're back to the starting point again. It isn't sustainable long term. You have to be constantly working towards something. And I know there's probably people out there that are saying, what, doing calf raises at work? I'll get laughed at. Like, I'll look like an idiot. But at the same time, you shouldn't worry about what those people are thinking, because you're doing something that's going to benefit you, not just in the short term, but in the long term as well. Like, put it into perspective, like, where do you see yourself in like 20 to 30 years? Do you want to be that person that's got a crooked back, that's struggling to stand tall? You can't pick your kids up, your grandkids up, you can't play with them? Or do you want to be that person that's able to move, able to play with your kids, your grandkids, and like not be in any pain, not be taking a bunch of tablets and medication? Because I know which path I'd rather choose. I'd rather be in that position where I'm able to move freely instead of having to take a bunch of tablets that are going to damage my body internally.
Yeah, definitely. And OCR is a great sport for, well, it being all encompassing, very dynamic. That is the good thing about it. But we can easily slip into like chronic training patterns that aren't actually like beneficial for us. And when I was personal training and working in a gym, I saw a lot of people like doing the same things week in, week out, and not actually like yielding any results and not actually seeking advice or help. They're just like, well, one day it'll work. And like one day never comes. And this actually happened to me. Like for about 8 years, I was just going round and round and round in circles. I was like, this is going to be the thing that changes everything, and jump on the latest approach or training program or whatever else. And it wasn't actually the training programs were the things that were at fault. It was actually like what I was doing behind the scenes. The way that I was eating, the way that I was living, the way that I was sleeping or not sleeping, the stress on top of that. And that's really where the goodness happens. So it doesn't matter how much training you do, if you aren't recovering from those training sessions, then you're not going to get the results that you want. But that leads on to like the nutrition and lifestyle things, but I don't want to tap into that too much. But yeah, it's very, very important. So yeah, let's talk about like the actual training and training like structure to prevent injuries. We've spoken about like accessories, accessory work and things like that. Maybe we can touch on a few things that we actually personally do to help prevent injury in regards to like running. We could even talk about like the strength work, which actually enhances that as well. And also what is too much, what is too little, what is kind of the sweet spot on that. So if you want to jump in with any suggestions on that, Mitch, far away.
I mean, we can like always build out an example and put it in a group of what not to do a session like an old, like I'm pretty sure I've got some session plans from the military when I was a PCI that I could just throw in because it is just a beating. Going back to the training side, I think to prevent injury, one of the most important things is the warm up. And it's something I see a lot of people don't do. They just turn up to the gym, they'll set the camera up ready to record, and they'll start fucking bench pressing. And it's like they've whacked on like 40 kilos, bench pressing. It's like you're not even warm. Your body isn't primed, ready to lift that weight. You've got to raise your body's core temperature essentially to be able to perform the movements and exercises. So I'd say that's one thing where a lot of people go wrong. They think just train, get out. So there's no structure there. You then look going into running. You've got different types of running, and you need to have a balance. One of the most beneficial training sessions that we do is zone 2 training. And I speak about this a lot to our guys, like people at events, and some people don't understand the benefits, but also they don't believe it as well. And it's amazing how many people come through and we start them on zone 2 training and they think, what the fuck is this? And then 6 months from now, they're like, holy fuck, I'm moving faster without putting strain on the body. And I was the exact same. I remember calling you. I was on the canal. I remember calling you and I was like, what the fuck is this? I was like, my heart rate's spiking up. I'm on a flat fucking canal. I can't control it. It's pissing me off. Like, I remember that was the first time I did zone 2. And then afterwards, I started getting the hang of it. And now it's just nature is accepting, okay, my heart rate goes up, allow it to come down. And for those that don't know what zone 2 training is, it's an aerobic style training which puts less impact on the body. So you're able to tap into your fat cells, you go into a fat burning state, but you're also able to build your aerobic endurance for a longer duration. So say you did a longer run, like this training is able to help you go that extra distance. So it's not likely going to improve your speed essentially, but it's building that engine inside you, and you can use this training method on so many different ways. You've got the cross trainer, so cross training in particular, you've got the bike, you've got the rower, you've got the ski, you've got the elliptical machine. You can go out running, you can even do this swimming. Like straight away, there's 6 methods that you can do zone 2 training, and it's such an effective way. You can balance it out as well. So if you've got hard running sessions throughout the week, like you can break it down. So when it comes to zone 2 training, you can hit the cross training machines to take the strain off the body, so you can still hit that training stimulus and be able to maximize your training program throughout the week.
Yeah, and it's overlooked, and like you said, a lot of people don't believe in it, but like for anyone at any level really should be doing this. And the coaches that I've worked with, they vouch for it, and we've seen it with the guys that we work with and within ourselves. But it's a great way to develop numerous aspects of your fitness for a low cost, providing you're not doing too much of that in one sitting, and that's balanced with the rest of the training. But it helps us like deliver oxygen to the cells in the body. Yeah, so you could be focusing on more high intensity work like VO2 work and like intervals and threshold work, which is great. packs a massive punch, but ultimately, if you're not able to deliver oxygen in the correct way, then that's going to be counterproductive. And also a benefit to this is like your metabolism. Yeah, because like Mitch mentioned, you might be looking to change your body composition, but if you're doing like essentially like sugar burning activities, like high intensity work, what typically happens is we need to replenish that glycogen, the carbohydrates. So we go and do this really, really high intensity workout, and then afterwards we have to replenish the carbohydrates from that. And then if we're trying to achieve a certain body composition, which is really, really important for OCR when we talk about that power to weight ratio. So power output being high, power consisting of both speed and strength. So we want to be strong and fast. That is power. And we need power for OCR. But then also weight. When we're talking about weight, we're not talking about like total body weight. In particular, we're talking about like the lean mass, but also the fat mass as well. So we're going to want a decent amount of muscle, but also we're going to want a relatively low body fat percentage. And when we have the power and the weight ratio in the right way for that individual, and it's very specific to the individual, then actually performance comes through. But if we're doing high intensity work all of the time, all we're going to be doing is emptying our carbohydrate tank and then eating more carbohydrate. And actually you could end up like putting on body fat based on that. And without like pointing fingers, there's a lot of skinny fat endurance athletes. There's a lot of skinny fat, gorgeous fat OCR athletes. And that's not to be mean in any way, shape or form. It's just talking about the style of training and the nutrition and the lifestyle that's on top of that. But for the guys that work with us, they are typically lean and muscular, or at least lean and performing well, because we're talking about and training and educating around like the metabolism and the different zones of training, but then also feeding in nutrition to that. And zone 2, like training, is essentially training the fat metabolism. But if your nutrition is out of whack for that, you can't train that optimally. So we need part of this to actually make our body more efficient at burning fat at higher intensities, which actually enables us to spare muscle glycogen and liver glycogen, so that when we're performing at a high level, actually we can conserve that and save that for the higher intensity. So it's basically changing the switch point. So not necessarily the more that we train it, but consistently training zone 2 is a great base for everything else to be built upon. So yeah, if you're not doing it, definitely consider that. But a problem we see is people really struggle. I struggled to do it. Mitch struggled to do it. Actually, the first year that I'd done it, I actually like got top 3 in age group in Spartan race. And that is all I done. I'm perfectly honest with that. I didn't do any interval training. I just built volume with zone 2. And then after a year of doing that, then I started to add in interval training sessions. Could I have got more of a fitness gain from doing intervals? Probably. Would that have potentially impaired the results that I got for like dialing in my metabolism? Potentially. Who knows? I don't know. It'd be very specific to the individual. And then guys that have already been decent runners, I remember one of which, Dan, when he come into us, already a very quick runner, we put him on initially 4 months of base building using this zone 2 approach. And then he hit PBs in 5K, 10K, half marathon in 4 months by no interval training, because he really dialed that in. Next 2 months, added some more interval-based training. And yet again, that took it to another level. But that's not just the training, that's looking at the nutrition, looking at the rest of the lifestyle, like sleep and stress rest balance as well. So it's really, really powerful, but it's overlooked because it's like a lot of people feel like they're wasting time by going slow. And one of the things we say is go slow to go fast. And that works for a lot of people, whether they're new to training or not. But certainly when we start working with people, not in every case, we will place some sort of emphasis on this, but depending on where they're at in the season. So yeah, it's a powerful approach.
I remember looking at like Dan's like stats for his math and zone 2, and I'd be jealous. Like, Dan, if you listen to this back, I used to hate seeing your zone 2 times because you were so quick and efficient at it, and I could never understand why. And I thought, holy fuck, Like it was incredible. So it does work. People just overlook it, but people can also get it wrong. I think some coaches can get it wrong. I was speaking to Ricky Carino a couple of weeks ago about it, 'cause we were talking about zone two, and like he mentioned he'd seen a coach talking about lactate threshold in zone two, and like zone two is you don't want to be hitting like an uncomfortable lactate threshold with your zone two. You want to be able to have a conversation. You should be able to breathe in and out through your nose, and that's probably a good indicator for zone two. Like for those that want to try it, if you're not able to breathe in and out through your nose and keep your mouth shut or have a conversation, sing, dance, you're going too fast. Slow it down, put the fucking brakes on and just ease off the gas, because these zone two runs or zone two cross training is really enjoyable when you get to do it. Like you can just explore and you finish it. You may feel like you haven't done much, but you'll feel fucking amazing from doing it.
Yeah, 100%. This is a great way to get more volume in, more hours of cardio in. But yeah, you've got to do it right, and you've got to be disciplined to stick to the right heart rate. But another variable as well is using conventional max heart rate approach, like on your Garmin watch or something like that. Immediately you could be operating 3 to 5 BPM over that and actually like drifting into more of a chronic like zone 3 training pattern. When we're talking about these zones though, we're talking specifically about like the 1 to 5 zone model. There is like a VT1, VT2, VT3, which that other coach might have been speaking about, like because his zone 2 would actually be the lactate threshold zone, and his zone 3 would be our zone 5. So there can be like confusion on that. So we're talking about like the typical zone 1 to 5 model for this in particular. But it's an easy pace, the zone 2 that we're talking about. It's like conversational, like Mitch was talking about. You can have a chat, you can easily breathe through your nose. But if you can't do that, then you're drifting above that. And something we suggest people do, and actually someone that's literally just joined the coaching program, I said to them, like, if you can't breathe through your nose when you're starting these out, regardless of heart rate, you're going too hard. And a lot of frustrations for people is actually having to slow down and walk, even on flat terrain or a gradual incline. But then what we find is over the coming weeks and over the coming months, they can run the same route for less effort, faster, and still nasal breathing. So I think to give you guys like an action step from this, and it's completely down to you whether you do it or not, or just continue training the way that you do. But a really great, easy assessment to do to really gauge where you're at is choose a really flat route, get warmed up to start with, and then choose a very flat route or as flat as possible, or even a treadmill, and like set it to a precise distance or run a precise distance, whether that's 3K or 5K on flat terrain, and stay nasal breathing. And then incorporate like nasal breathing into your zone 2 training, and incorporate zone 2 into your training at least 2 to 3 days a week. And then in 4 weeks, 6 weeks, 8 weeks, you could reassess this. And what you would find if you've done this diligently is you'd be able to run that same route faster for less perceived effort, and you'd actually cover more distance in that time. And then that would be a good sign that you've developed your aerobic base. And yeah, again, benefits to that: metabolism is going to be like your oxygen delivery. But another thing to take into consideration is nutrition, something that can impair like the ability to like tap into the energy source of fat, is actually eating more fat around that training session. Because if you put sugar in the body in and around an aerobic training session, you're promoting sugar burning metabolism. You're promoting the use of carbohydrates. So for guys, something we do is we'll like either do it in a fasted state, okay, which is very, very simple. All right. And that's not so we maximize fat burning or whatever, although that could be a benefit. Or you're going to eat a protein fat breakfast a few hours before that, so that you're actually staying in that fat burning state. And research suggests, and this is from like a world leading doctor, Dr. Sachin Panda, who studies metabolism and circadian rhythm. if you eat sugar, even in the smallest amount, and this is very dependent for each individual, that could put you out of a fat burning state for 12 plus hours. Okay, so if fat loss or decreasing your weight so that you can perform better in OCR isn't going in the way that you want, maybe you're never truly getting into a fat burning state because of, one, your nutritional choices, two, too much stress in day-to-day life, three, sleep, and then four, the training intensity that you're currently applying. And this is one of the things that we do, and that's why a lot of the guys are lean, because we're not only looking at the training and optimizing the intensity, we're also looking at the nutrition and lifestyle, and all of these things come hand in hand. And if they don't, stress is going to be too high, recovery is going to be too low. So it's bringing that seesaw more in balance. All right, so we're big advocates of low intensity heart rate training for many, many, many different reasons. You can pick and choose what you want to do with this, but we've seen great results personally in ourselves and many, many other people, but it's not everything. Yeah, and it depends on what stage of the season you're in. It depends of what stage of life you're in. It depends on your precise fitness goals at that moment. But a few months ago, I had a lactate threshold and VO2 max assessment, and I still had at my current VO2, I think 8% that I could still grow into with my aerobic base, which is huge. Imagine like an 8% increase on metabolism and oxygen delivery. Significant. But that could take years to get there. But yet again, taking the right approach rather than thinking I need to increase 8% in the next year, have a look at how you can increase that over many, many, many years. And actually guys that we compete against that are in the mid-40s performing phenomenally well. So look at it where you could be in 10 years by planting the seeds, being consistent, remaining injury-free, having some fun so that you've got like good levels of motivation physically and mentally to remain consistent. Cool. All right. Well, there's just so much I could continue to talk about. But I think that would be a good take-home thing is look at optimizing that base level so you can stack everything above that. And a lot of recreational or even like age group athletes would gain a lot of benefit. Two of my competitive seasons where I finished top 3 in the age group series, predominant amount of that was zone 2. Yeah, easy training. So yeah, speaks volumes. Same for Mitch. Like you can see his trophies behind him, or 2 of them at least, because his head's in the way. But there you go. So some results, and then many of the guys that have won top 3s national series in the past couple of years, yet again exactly the same. And then for people that are more experienced as well, the thing is you will need more. So it's like at some point it will get to a point where zone 2 shouldn't be the emphasis, and maybe you should put more effort on the threshold, lactate threshold, zone 4, or lower end zone 4, upper end zone 3, or maybe actually you need to do some VO2 work. So that's something that needs to be taken into consideration. Is it's not everything, and the higher you rise, the thinner the oxygen gets, and therefore you might need to change the dynamic. And a great thing to think of this is like a 3-tier stack or a building, or maybe even a pyramid. And the top of the pyramid or the top of the building is a ceiling or a roof that needs to increase in order to, I don't know, fill the building or fill the triangle more. So at the bottom, you've got the aerobic base, which you need to fill up, and then that gets so far, then you'd need to increase that. But eventually that would hit a ceiling and a point. So if you have hit a plateau, it could be for many different reasons, many. But if you're not seeing the fitness gains that you need to make, maybe you've maxed out with your VO2, and maybe you need to do VO2 work to increase your fitness, or it could be the complete opposite. Actually, you're capped out currently on your VO2, and it wouldn't actually be beneficial to do any more VO2 work. Actually, what you need to do is focus on that zone 2, build in the aerobic base, maybe a little bit of threshold work on top of that. When you fill in that void, fill in the triangle, fill in the pyramid, fill in the building, and then increase the ceiling again. But it takes time. And it's quite hard to say where you may be exactly on that without assessments. But yeah, some food for thought there. Anything else you want to go over, Mitch?
No, I think we went on a bit of a tangent there, a little bit with a zone 2, but I think everyone gets the gist.
Yeah. All right. So I think to like summarize on all of this, all of the components of training are very, very important, because that's the stress that is going to provide the stimulus to create change. But what we don't want to do is increase the stress too much that actually it's detrimental. And all of the components, like your running, your strength work, the accessory work, the precise like zone training, really, really important, but also in the correct dose. And if you don't do that, potentially you could risk injury, and that's the thing that will affect consistency. So just really look at everything from a higher level, not just what you want to achieve today to get the most out of today's training session. Look at the rest of the week, look at the month, look at the training calendar, look at the events that you want to do, and reverse engineer the whole process, and that will give you a higher level view of the bigger picture and what you want to achieve. But then on top of this as well, have like a longer term game plan than going, oh, I'm going to do this 6-week training block, because you're working forward and potentially could encounter problems. But if you work backwards, you could actually like mitigate or prevent a lot of those things in there. So think about a daily simple practice that can help you, that will accumulate over time and lead to big results. I will end there.
Yeah, hit the nail on the head.
All right, guys, if you've got any questions, need any support or anything like that, drop some comments below, drop some comments over on Spotify. If you took some value from this as well, like just let us know. It's really helpful to know that these trainings, these calls are actually making a difference for you as well. And yeah, the more we do that, the more we can bring more to you. And also, if you want precise topics covered, then yeah, just let us know on that front. We can best shape and create the experience within the group and on the podcast for you. So yeah, the more you give, the more you get in return.
I think next topic should be sleep. This is a big one.
Yeah. So yeah, give us a shout, guys, if you want us to talk about sleep. But yeah, it's a big, powerful one, and it can easily slip. So yeah, it'll be a good one to chuck.
If you're not getting 12 hours, you're not doing it right.
Yeah, everyone's like, what? Barely sticks. Great. All right, Mitch. Cheers, man. Thanks for hopping on, guys. I hope you took some value, and we'll speak soon.
Right,
Peace.
see you later.